Welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Charles Roddie, the CEO of Summatic. It's a really interesting company. I was doing some research and they define themselves as the interactive maths textbook. And here's what their website says. Our intelligent software gives immediate and reliable feedback on your answers, and our live graphs can make hard concepts much easier to understand. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you, Ozan.
So the market size is big, definitely. A lot of people need to learn maths, or people across the pond say math. I think there's some kind of a confusion on what we describe this by. But anyways, it is also a market that is defined by a lot of competition, and especially if we define that competition more broadly. So let's start with the market. Who is your ideal market, and what is the size of opportunity here?
Yes, well, it segments into age groups, really, because it's a very different market for younger kids as it is for middling school ages towards the end of school and then university. So we're really covering end of school and then university studies, where you need a special sort of technology, a special sort of content. And what is the market for that? Well, it's anyone who is studying GCSE A-levels in maths, but also university STEM subjects. So it's still a very large market, but our niche is towards the higher end of the educational system.
Of course, with every startup, there's the need to validate product itself, validate if people are willing to spend time on it, if there are a few things to validate. But
yes,
let's start with the financial aspect of this. So how do we know there is appetite in the market for a product like this in a way that can earn the company revenue?
It's a big question, and we were working on a lot of projections, and we took our initial investment based on projections, based on what it would make sense for us, how much a school could save in terms of marking time, and how much they might value the reporting and analytics. But now we actually have our first clients. We can actually validate how much they are paying, and whether that's to what extent it seems to be worth it to them, how much they might be willing to spend on additional services. So really, since we've had our first large university clients, it's a lot easier to put more reliable numbers that investors can look at and are real.
So you make the deals, the agreements with the universities rather than the B2C users.
Yes, that's right. I think we are quite organized people, and so are universities. It's more of a more bureaucratic process, but an organized process that can be understood. So we have discussions with lecturers, heads of teaching. Usually they would form a group to evaluate a product. We give them some demo materials, give them a proposal, and then it goes out into deployment. So it's a very systematic process. We understand well, and with my background as in academia, as a lecturing in Cambridge, it's quite easy. It's easier for me to make those connections with university departments. With individuals, we're likely to try that later, but it's a very different route to market. So it's not something that we can currently focus on.
It's a different strategy for sure.
Yes.
While we're at it, I would love to hear about your background and like your involvement with this, your backstory and what led to building this product.
Right. Well, I was a mathematician as an undergraduate. Then I did a PhD in economics, and then lectured in economics at Oxford and Cambridge. And I definitely enjoyed teaching at that level. Some of my students commented that I should be writing textbooks because they liked my written materials. But I actually wanted to
compliment.
Yeah, right. But I want to do something a little bit more interesting and advanced, modern than a textbook, because it's always been interesting to me what's the right balance between technology, between machine and man, and the education system has been was quite static and somewhat slow to adopt technology prior to the COVID pandemic. And so I wanted to explore what could be done to give you a computer that can take on the right role in teaching and allow academics to ask questions, to give content with the same level of quality, but in a more efficient way. So how can we make the system more efficient, but maintain the quality level?
I think there's a very, very fascinating, interesting discussion hidden in what you said just there. A lot of our audience members don't know this about me because I don't like to usually talk about this in this podcast, but I've actually written a few books in different topics. My background is in psychology and sociology, so there's a clash between these two disciplines. So I thought it was a very productive, a fertile ground for some argument. So that was my the concern of my first book, and then I moved on to other stuff from there. But what I thought at the time was, why do people write books anymore, right? If the goal is, so if you go back to 50 years, 100 years back, what is the goal of writing a book in the first place? And if we kind of reverse engineer the core reasons for why do we write a book, and then try to reformulate that question and answer, okay, what should I do today to reach those goals? The answer is not to write a book. The answer is to perhaps shoot TikTok videos, or the answer is to perhaps build a startup. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that's true. But it depends a lot on the area. In some areas, the book is still the right form, and in our area, we have a lot of respect for the book and for the textbook, because it combines explanations, it combines graphical materials, combines questions in a way that has been proven over centuries and is hard to beat. So we want to really preserve as much as we can of the book and of the textbook, but make it more interactive, automated, online, and just improve something that exists and take what's best in the book.
It's also very complex, isn't it? At a neuroscience level, the way we interact with written text on physical paper is different than how we interact with digital bits on a screen.
Yes, it is a nice form factor, the book. One of the things that I don't understand too well is how people manage to do so many things on very small phones. So we need to. Our system has to be deployable across things that are sort of tablet size, which is very like a book, but also phone sized, because that's what someone might have when walking in or taking a bus, to computers, which is something that academics have.
That's indeed true. I remember these calculators, TIs. We were given Texas Instrument, and I remember doing like log scales on it. It was quite fun. I had an advanced mathematics class. But,
yes, well, they haven't changed much over time. Those have
haven't
been,
they?
No,
I haven't
they're
seen
pretty
them
much
for like 15 years, 20 years now.
Well, they're exactly the same as they were then. Yeah.
So, okay, here is a very dumb sounding question, and apologies for that. So, how is what you're doing different than a TI? Like, what is the add-on that you provide?
Well, a TI doesn't really explain ideas. It doesn't ask you questions, and it allows you to calculate things. Now, actually, we actually do compete with some educational products that do help people to calculate things and to answer questions. But the educational value of those things is a little limited. So if you're a teacher, your perspective on that might be that, well, we don't really want students to be using these things. They just help people to do things that they should be thinking about and doing themselves. So we do everything else that's not that, which is present the ideas in interactive visual form. We ask questions, and then students answer them on the system, which of course you don't do on a calculator. And then we evaluate those answers and give feedback on students' steps.
So it less like a hammer, more like a hammersmith.
Right.
The analogy works here. I don't know.
Right.
But there's, I get it. So my dumb question had some merit after all in understanding this.
No, well, I mean, not a dumb question. No, not at all.
There are no dumb questions. But I would just like to dig in just a bit deeper in the. So these ideas that you explain. So is there an example to help us visualize or understand or feel better what it is that's going on here? And also with that secondary question, how does the answers to the question, how are they evaluated? Is it based on some kind of machine learning? Do you have fixed answers, or is it a human that's giving feedback there? So so I'm asking actually about the both ends of that interaction between the human who's using the device and the value you're creating by what you're building.
Well, there are two aspects to the question. So on the first part, which is how do we explain ideas? So that's the first step of learning, where you read about something, you try to understand it, and if you read a textbook, there are a lot of ideas that are expressed in graphical form, if it's maths or if it's a STEM subject, and those graphs can often be quite difficult to understand because they have lots of different elements. So what we try to do is, if you can build them up one step at a time, so you click on step 1, step 2, step 3, the explanations come up, and also the different bits of the graphs start to come alive. So you see how it builds up, as you might see if a teacher were explaining it on paper or on a board. And you can also play with, you can move points and adjust sliders, and that helps you get a sense of how things interact in this graphical image. It's quite hard to explain in words, but I hope that gives a flavor.
It does. So almost kind of like the connection between a certain level of algebra and formulations and calculations, and how it connects to geometry, which is a tool actually to
Yes, we try to make things a bit more geometrical, because it's nice to explain things verbally and also visually, as well as getting people a practice.
That's fantastic. It's something I've felt a lack of when I at times at these rare moments when you realize, okay, this is the geometrical visualization of the thing that I've been studying for 6 months.
Yes,
it comes as a revelation. And
right.
Why did I not know about this sooner? Right.
Yes. That's the sort of emotion we try to convey, and that's the excitement that I think comes from learning maths. But as to your second question, which is how do we evaluate what students have written, that's actually a very deep question, because there are different approaches to that. So one approach is to really simplify the things that they can say into a multiple choice numeric form, and that's what we absolutely avoid, because those aren't the natural questions. Those will constrain your thinking and your learning as in the process. And that leaves two approaches. One of them is artificial intelligence, and so we sort of develop a black box that could most of the time try to work out whether your answer is okay and where you might have gone wrong. That's not the approach we've taken, because it's a subtle thing, but we want to actually teach the computer to completely reliably assess whether your answer was right or wrong, and if it's wrong, what aspect needs to be improved. And if it's right, does it need to be? Is it in a final form?
Interesting.
So we teach the system the rules, and we have a number of what's called symbolic algebra, ways of manipulating mathematics to try to work out if your answer is the same as the right one. Which it's not a trivial process, because there are different forms of your answer could be valid. So we want to be exactly as restrictive as a good mathematician would be when marking student work. Because if you're assigning work to a large cohort that might be 500 or even 1,000 people, and they're doing lots and lots of attempts each, you want to have a good reliability rate, because we want students to feel that they can trust the system. And we actually aim to get close to 100% reliability, actually 99.9% at least reliability of marking the steps. And that means developing a system that's based on rules, and that we can understand exactly how it works. And so it's teaching the computer rules rather than allowing it to do its own thing and guess what works most of the time.
It's fascinating. So what is the technology you're depending to do this? What is the software development framework, and like what are the key points of success for you there?
It's partly a matter of the skills of the programmers involved, both the pure mathematics to be able to teach teach the computer mathematics from scratch. We certainly are using some good tools. So the programming language we use, it's F#. It's a functional programming language, which is very suited to mathematics, it's very suited to manipulating language and seeing the structure of an expression of language, which is that relates to evaluating student answers. What's the form of those answers? How can we manipulate that form to try to work out, is this good or bad?
Interesting. That's really fascinating. And F# does make absolute sense as a functional first language. So that's really interesting. And do you rely at all on or do you plan to on machine learning or like those kind of things?
Yes, we're developing that as a bit of an add-on because it's we're likely to take an AI approach that will give you some extras. It would say, well, what might you have been thinking to lead you to write down this step? But that's not a reliable approach. It's a suggestion only. So we're going to add these suggestions in, which will come from AI. But for the reliable system, we've programmed that in all those processes directly.
This made me think of the joke on it's not a bug, it's a feature type of a thing. So perhaps it could be really interesting to just spin this whole story around about the unreliability of AI in this specific context and say, okay, it's not going to give you the answer. It might be wrong. So the user, the student, is still critical thinking through that answer, still judging if the AI is working or not. So it's perhaps better than AI giving a good answer 100% of the time.
Yes, except that students also have their ways of going wrong. So it's really nice if you can rely on a system to tell you if it's good or bad. Given that there are so many difficulties and uncertainties in learning anyway, we don't really need extra ones to be introduced by the system.
Got it. Makes sense. So let's talk about the financial aspect of this. Pricing, I find is, I've in the past attempted in some of the businesses that we've built, trying to create formulations for reaching the best price point on different products. But
yes.
It turned out to be so complex that like those exercises with hindsight were kind of futile. So then I tried to approach it from a point of view. I did some research on this as well, and I asked the question, can you intuitively get to a price? That doesn't seem to always yield the best result. So of course the best result is going empirically here rather than rationally.
Yes.
And asking the market and learning from the students. But still there's imperfect information, and that can be difficult to reach because people respond to how much they would pay versus how much they pay in reality differs. So there's a gap there as well. So
yes.
How do you manage the uncertainty, and how do you go about doing the pricing? I'm really curious about your perspective because of the special relationship of you and of the product with maths. Like, is maths involved in your pricing model, and how do you approach that?
I wish it were, but it's not. Unfortunately, we don't have an equation for how to price a product. Fortunately, we have. In talking to departments about what they're willing to pay, we do get some very direct feedback about proposals. So we've just gone in, and the difficult thing is to work out what you tell them initially, because even though you may be very collaborative, people want to hear a price when you talk to them about a product. In my experience,
they do.
They want to evaluate something rather than discuss something. They want to have something concrete on the table.
Apologies for the interruption. I thought this is really interesting, and also the research on sales and pricing say it gives the best result, the highest conversion to sales when you mention price before the halfway point of that sales conversation. Please carry on. I wanted to squeeze that in there.
Yes, but of course that makes it difficult because the price you mention, it may put some people off, but it may be very attractive for others. You may not even have decided the extent of your product's integration with that client before you have to mention a price. How we do it is after discussing with academics here, people who purchase products from the University of Cambridge, where I work. Then we went out to clients, what we thought was a good deal. And whenever we go to institute conversations, we come up with a ballpark, and that based on previous conversations that people will be comfortable with, on the extent to which we'll need to do customizations. And then the key thing is that once they get started, we hope to deliver value that's way above what the price.
Got it.
What the price is. It seems to be working so far, but it's certainly not a precise process, and we haven't honed it down into a specific prices for specific bundles that we can put on our page yet. That will come very shortly.
Got it. And how long has it been since you launched the company?
We launched Summatic at the start of 2021. Mm-hmm. But I've been working on the technology for quite a while before then. Initially in my spare time, but then full time. So we started with a good base of technology and content that allowed us to contact universities in summer 2021 to actually start deploying for this academic year.
Got it. Looking at the last year, what would you say has been the biggest accomplishment so far for the business? We've
really enjoyed our work with Bristol Universities, which is our first university department clients. We put a lot of effort into making sure the experience is good. It had challenges because they had a bumper crop of students, and we were maintaining the systems, making sure all the systems were performing well. The marks were correct. People weren't experiencing bugs, etc. So it was a lot of work to get it all running very, very smoothly, and worked out well. They were very, very happy. So that was a big accomplishment. But you asked me for one, but I'm going to give two. Also taking investment was a big step. That's great. Forming the team. Actually, it's quite hard to work out of these three which is the biggest accomplishment, but
I would say so. So, have you shared publicly the amount of funding you received, or is it something you're keeping close to your chest?
Yes, we took a £200,000 investment round. That was in summer 2021.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you have a team of 6 people, am I wrong?
That's right, yes.
6 people. Also, by the way, are you hiring? If so, what roles are you looking for? It's sometimes good to announce because people
we're not hiring right now, but we hire quite regularly, both for short-term and long-term roles. Any future long-term roles will depend on an investment round that we are likely to take in the next in the next 6 months. So, but we have actually worked with quite a lot of people in both long-term and short-term roles. So we often have internships over the summer where people have helped with business development, with content development, sometimes with software development, and long-term roles we've built up more gradually. But we're likely to be looking in the next in the next 3 months.
So, is there anything you'd like to add? As perhaps as an announcement for the people listening in, as a call to action?
Well, I think you have your audience is quite diverse, so I wouldn't ask them to do the same call to action. But if those who are interested in forming their own startups or getting involved with startups, if you're up for a huge challenge, I recommend it. It tests all aspects of your skills and personality.
It does, doesn't it?
Which could be terrifying, or it could be extremely enjoyable. So if you have that type of masochism, I highly recommend it.
It's about the mental, I would say.
Yes.
The mental strength you have, because a lot of uncertainty is there. And I think we are programmed throughout our childhood to think, and people ask you, what do you want out of life? What do you want? And then you realize, okay, I want this. And then you realize at a certain age, like how much input you had in what you want is a matter of debate. And then you start comparing yourself with other people. I think the startup journey is also because of these reasons, on top of the reasons you said.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just very quickly, because you have various groups, I'm going to split up the answer. But so if there are people who are interested in working in edtech, in mathematics, in STEM, in a startup, then do get in touch, and we'll keep you on the list in case we have roles that are open. Very, very likely to happen in the next few months.
How can they get in touch with you? Should they?
They can find me on LinkedIn,
Dr.
Charles Roddie. That would be one approach, or they can email the address that's on the website.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any investors, we believe we've got the right product for university STEM markets. I think we'll be very big. It's quite a wide open market because there are not a lot of advanced products being used at the moment. So if you get in touch with us, we'll send you some updates that might pique your interest.
And it is Summatic, SUMMATIC.co.uk.
Exactly, yes.
For the people out there. Dr. Charles Roddie, thank you. This was a privilege. This was a good chat. Thank you for taking the time.
Great pleasure, Ozan.